It's a trucking, transportation, and lifestyle show like none other.
Man, you call this a life?
Road Gang Radio is back for another half hour of the best transpo show in the known universe.
We come in peace. Well, actually, we're falling to pieces.
Let's see if we can achieve liftoff, Phone Master Dre.
We can, and we did. Oh, well, a few things are happening, and we're happening now. We did, and we are here. This is the last hour, well, the live hour of Road Gang Radio with your host, Jimmy Mack, and Lindsay's here.
Lindsay Lawler is in the house. Good morning to you, LaRue. How are you?
I'm great. I'm moving and shaking down here, shaking hands and I almost said shaking babies. I'm not shaking babies. Shaking hands and kissing babies down here at the NASTIC conference in Music City, in the heart of downtown Nashville. So yeah, it's very fun. It's all things are happening, everything, everywhere, all at once, Jimmy.
And by the way, it's like one of those great Jerry Lewis telethons, especially the one where they brought Dean Martin out after many years of not having spoken to Jerry Lewis. You actually have got some fabulous pictures of you, Dave Nemo, and our good friend David Owen getting together, smiling and laughing. Before we bring on our next guest, I do want to cover this really quickly. We'll cover it again. Andrew King hates to be the bearer of bad news, but there are new troubling signs that the freight market may be headed for significant hardship. Nobody wants to hear it, and it's hard to believe things can get much worse. But the director of the OOIDA Foundation says the data out there can help people make more informed decisions about their business. Plus, Tom Mullen has a pretty good gig as the chairman of the American Trucking and Industry Leader Hall of Fame. They just included 4 new members, and it just kills me, Lindsay. I should have been there to be the MC, but I'm glad you guys are over in NASTIC. They just inducted 4 new members who have shaped the trucking industry in important ways. Tom will be telling Ashley and Scott about their contributions, along with other things that make his job at the American Truck Historical Society so much fun. That is our good friends Scott and Ashley for Trucking with OIDA, coming up here immediately after Road Gang Radio. Now, Lindsay, take a breath with me. Dre's going to play some music, and then we're going to bring our next guest in, who everybody knows all too well. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's right. Only that laugh would be appropriate on a Last Empty Places that actually is about cannibalism. You guys all know Peter Stark, by the way, author, adventurer, and magnificent writer. He joins us as a guide to those out-of-the-way places in America and beyond that many listeners have either driven through or flown above, but have not fully appreciated, understood, or contemplated. The only thing to guide you is your wit when Peter Stark arrives on the scene. Good morning to you, my friend.
Good morning. The music's giving me the chills.
It's supposed to. And by the way, Lindsay is over in Nashville for a conference today, but she's with us on the phone, and we were trying to decide which segment she would be on, and I asked her, I said, you're going to be able to make Peter? And she said, the topic is cannibalism. Of course I'm going to be there. Lindsay, do you want to start this conversation off?
Yes, I want to start it. I want to middle it. I want to end it. I want to talk to Peter for the rest of my life about cannibalism. This, both fascinates me and keeps me up at night. So yes, I am here. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, nothing like talking about cannibalism at breakfast.
Yeah, right. Good times. Good times. Well, I feel like, Peter, I feel like I'm also in the music industry, and that feels a little bit like cannibalism as well, which is like we just eat each other alive out here. So I feel like I'm in good company. No, this is, there are a million angles and ways to take this conversation, but I just want to start here because, we obviously have evolved enough where this doesn't come up too often in our own lives, thankfully. But it does look us, cannibalism forces us to confront our most primal survival instincts, of course. I'm so curious, Peter, when you look at these stories and your research on it, do you find, is cannibalism, is it an act of desperation, or can it also be seen really as like a distorted form of devotion, keeping a loved one with you in the most literal sense, or keeping yourself alive? Like it's kind of, is it equal parts? Is it equal parts desperation and devotion? Is that too much to say?
I would say it's mostly desperation. And in the context of Europeans, in the context of other cultures, there have been cultures who cannibalize their victims and ingest the spiritual strength of their victims. They do it to incorporate literally in their bodies the strength of their victim, and it's in a way it's a respect. In some of the Native American cultures, that was an important thing. To if you slayed a particularly brave warrior, your opponent, eating his heart was one way of recognition of his power, and that you're now ingesting that. However, in European culture, it happened in a lot of different ways, but almost every way had to do with desperation. And, in some ways, cannibalism could be closer than we all think. And here we are, we're getting close to Thanksgiving. The year is turning. It's getting darker. It's colder. We go outside, a little chill. We're going out for a walk or hunting or trick-or-treating in the cold. And we don't realize that we're actually entering the realm of a powerful supernatural force. I know a guy who ventured out that way once and had quite a story.
Go
on.
When
your Jeep spins lazily off the mountain road, when your Jeep spins lazily off the mountain and slams backward into a snowbank, you don't worry immediately about the cold. Your first thought is that you've just dented your bumper. Your second is that you failed to bring a shovel. Your third is that you'll be late for dinner. Friends are expecting you at their cabin around 8 for a moonlight ski, a late dinner, a sauna. Nothing can keep you from that. Driving out of town, defroster roaring, you barely noted the bank thermometer on the town square, minus 27 degrees at 6:36. The radio weather report warned of a deep mass of Arctic air settling over the region. The man who took your money at the Conoco station shook his head at the register and said he wouldn't be going anywhere tonight if he were you. You smiled. A little chill never hurt anybody with enough fleece and a good four-wheel drive. But now you're stuck. Jamming the gear shift into low, you try to muscle out of the drift. The tires whine on ice-slickened road as headlights dance in the curtain of frosted firs across the road. You ease the lever back into park. You shoulder open the door and step from your heated capsule. Cold slaps your naked face, squeezes tears from your eyes. You check your watch. 7:18. You consult your map. A thin, switchbacking line snakes up the mountain to the penciled square that marks the cabin. Breath rolls from you in short, frosted puffs. The Jeep lies cocked sideways in the snowbank like an empty turtle shell. You think of firelight and saunas and warm food and wine. You look again at the map. It's maybe 5 or 6 miles more to that penciled square. You run that far every day before breakfast. You'll just put on your skis and ski there. No problem. There is no precise core temperature at which the human body perishes from cold. The lowest recorded core temperature in a surviving adult is 60.8 degrees. For a child, it's lower. In 1994, a 2-year-old girl in Saskatchewan wandered out of her house into a 40-degree night. She was found near her doorstep the next morning, limbs frozen, her core temperature 57 degrees. Others are less fortunate, even in much milder conditions. One of Europe's worst weather disasters occurred during a 1964 competition walk on a windy, rainy English moor. 3 of the racers died from hypothermia, though temperatures never fell below freezing and ranged as high as 45. But for all scientists and statisticians now know of freezing and its physiology, no one can yet predict exactly how quickly and in whom hypothermia will strike, and whether it will kill when it does. The cold remains a mystery, more prone to fell men than women, more lethal to the thin and well-muscled than to those with avoirdupois, and least forgiving to the arrogant and the unaware. So that guy got into real trouble. And I won't go on with the story. We could pick it up later. But in the European world, cannibalism usually struck in the Arctic, and it struck big time. These Arctic explorers from England, especially the British, Royal Navy adventurers, would push themselves so far north, trying to find the Northwest Passage over the northern edge of the continent, or trying to reach the North Pole or be farthest north in the Arctic. That was a huge goal. It was a celebrated goal in the 1800s and early 1900s. And they would go so far that they would get themselves stuck. And then when they got themselves stuck, winter would set in. And after that, there was no way back. And you can guess what happened then. They started dying. And they're in their ship or in their hut or tent, and there they are, a bunch of starving men, thinking about food constantly. And eventually one of them just gives out, perishes. By British Royal Navy tradition standards, you give him a decent service, put him to rest somewhere, out in the snowbank, out in the behind the cabin. And it's known that he's there, and you'll all carry on suffering, starving, but leaving the man his dignity. And then what happens is that one night someone sneaks out of the cabin, and the next morning they look at the body and there's a chunk of it missing. And then every night after that, the body gets hacked apart a little bit more. And the commander starts investigating who is cannibalizing our mate. And that's when the trouble begins. They start fighting over whether or not we're going to cannibalize each other, and what are the punishments for someone who does. So I have a lot of stories that go into that world, but that's the general outline of what happens.
I could listen to you read. You need to read Halloween stories, by the way, for a 98th job, just to add to the mix.
Oh my God! Oh my God! And by the way, if I'm remembering correctly, the opening story, by the way, was a portion from Last Breath. If I got that right, correct, Peter?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, that's right. And it goes on for quite a while. And this guy, the you character, makes one little mistake after another as he's climbing up, through the woods and the snow and his skis up this hill to the mountain, up to the cabin, and one little mistake after another adds up, and his temperature starts dropping. And the story traces how at when his hands reach 60 degrees, that's when the hands are cold, how the capillaries constrict and take blood away from your skin and send it deeper into your torso to keep your vital organs warm. And then how you start losing brain function as your body temperature drops to 95 degrees. And for every degree below that, you lose a certain percentage of brain function. And he's slogging up the mountain, and all his body temperature begins to fall. He falls in the snow. He decides he should turn back, and he falls in the snow. And when he does, his ski binding breaks, and so now he has to dig around to find the binding in the snow. And then he eventually does and tries to ski again, and then he hits a log and falls, and he breaks an ankle. Now he's lying there in the snow. And it then traces his body temperature going down bit by bit. And now he starts imagining the hallucinatory effects of hypothermia, of extreme cold. So it's with every 1 degree drop in body temperature below 95, your cerebral metabolic rate falls off by 3 to 5%. When your core temperature reaches 93, amnesia nibbles at your consciousness.
Oh, God.
You check your watch, 12:58. Maybe someone will come looking for you soon. Moments later, you check again. You can't keep the numbers in your head. You'll remember little of what happens next. Your head drops back. The snow crunches softly in your ear. In the minus 35-degree air, your core temperature falls about 1 degree every 30 to 40 minutes, your body heat leaching out into the soft, enveloping snow. Apathy at 91 degrees. Stupor at 90. You've now crossed the boundary into profound hypothermia. By the time your core temperature has fallen to 88 degrees, your body has abandoned the urge to warm itself by shivering. Your blood is thickening like crankcase oil in a cold engine. Your oxygen consumption, a measure of your metabolic rate, has fallen by more than a quarter. Your kidneys, however, work overtime to process the fluid overload that occurred when the blood vessels in your extremities constricted and squeezed fluids toward your center. You feel a powerful urge to urinate, the only thing you feel at all. By 87 degrees, you've lost the ability to recognize a familiar face should one suddenly appear from the woods. At 86 degrees, your heart, its electrical impulses hampered by chilled nerve tissues, becomes arrhythmic. It now pumps less than 2/3 the normal amount of blood. The lack of oxygen and the slowing metabolism of your brain, meanwhile, begin to trigger visual and auditory hallucinations. You hear jingle bells. Lifting your face from your snow pillow, you realize with a surge of gladness that they're not sleigh bells. They're welcoming bells hanging from the door of your friend's cabin. You knew it had to be close by. The jingling is the sound of the cabin door opening just through the fir trees. Attempting to stand, you collapse in a tangle of skis and poles. That's okay. You can crawl. It's so close. Hours later, or maybe it's minutes, you realize the cabin still sits beyond the grove of trees. You crawled only a few feet. The light on your wristwatch pulses in the darkness. 5:20. Exhausted, you decide to rest your head for a moment. When you lift it again, you're inside, lying on the floor before the wood stove. The fire throws off a red glow. First it's warm, then it's hot, then it's searing your flesh. Your clothing is caught on fire. At 85 degrees, those freezing to death in a strange, anguished paroxysm often rip off their clothes. This phenomena, known as paradoxical undressing, is common enough that urban victims are sometimes initially diagnosed as victims of sexual assault. Though researchers are uncertain of the cause, the most logical explanation is that shortly before the loss of consciousness, the constricted blood vessels near the body's surface suddenly dilate and produce a sensation of extreme heat against the skin. All you know is that you're burning. You claw off your shell and pile sweater and fling them away. But then, in a final moment of clarity, you realize there's no stove, no cabin, no friends. You're lying alone in the bitter cold, naked from the waist up. You grasp your terrible misunderstanding, a whole series of misunderstandings, like a dream ratcheting into wrongness. You shed your clothes, your car, your oil-heated house in town. Without this ingenious technology, you're simply a delicate tropical organism whose range is restricted to a narrow sunlit band that girds the earth at the equator. And now you ventured way beyond it. So the guy is in deep trouble.
this
Wow.
this special Halloween edition of The Last Empty Places has been brought to you by Peter Stark. Lindsay, I sat there going, like, I looked over at the clock and I'm like, maybe I'm freezing to death right now because I really feel the need to rip my clothes off. I'm so traumatized right now.
I'm serious.
Well,
You know
so
what?
now we can. I mean, so that's hypothermia, but it's this is so related to the cannibalism story. So we can talk about the power of cold and the power of the human urge to stay alive in the cold and starving and in starving conditions, and what that can do to the human psyche.
I got to say,
So
what I'm thinking about, Jim, I'm trying to think if I would eat Jim first or he would eat me first if we were trapped, is where my head went. But I got to say, Peter, years ago I was playing a show in Missoula, Montana in January. You do the math. And my guitar player's family, the guitar player's family has a cabin on Placid Lake. And so that's where we were staying. And there was a huge snowstorm. And everyone's like, don't go back to the cabin for the night. Stay down here in Missoula. And we're like, we'll be fine. So we're a full band in a minivan luging to get down.
This is just like the story.
Literally. And in my head, I'm like, at the time, I'm like, what could go wrong? I didn't even think anything.
Now you know.
Listening to you read. Now I know, listening to you read. I guess maybe, could you talk real quickly about that? Like, as we think cannibalism is so far off from us, but if you find yourself in a desperate situation, no matter what year or culture you're in, we don't know what we'll do until we're in it, I guess, right?
Yeah. I think in almost all cultures there's such strictures against cannibalism. I mean, it's if it were a allowed and easily acceptable thing, we'd all be killing and eating each other every day because it's a lot easier doing that than making money and going to the supermarket and buying meat. Kill your neighbor and eat him. So there are good reasons the human species would not have survived if cannibalism were a deeply ingrained habit in human society. In all of them, or in daily life. So but in these extreme circumstances, that those strictures just fall away. They just get chipped away in strange ways, and some people really resist it, and others are much more practical about it. In the story of the Donner Party. In the wagon train crossing the Sierra on the Oregon Trail, and they cross the Sierra Mountains, and they get stuck in deep snow in the winter, and they're I don't know, about 100 people, and they're trying to send someone out to bring in rescuers, and meanwhile there are all these women and children kind of trapped in these home built cabins in the snow, and there's one bigger party that goes out to try to get help. And in this bigger party, that I think there are a couple of women and several men. And it's really interesting that the women end up being much more, much tougher in a way than the men, and more sort of together mentally in this situation. And I can't remember exactly with the search party if they end up eating each other, or some of them just end up dying, or they get into gun battles. But it's extremely tense. And then meanwhile, back at the cabins, the women and children, there are a few men there, that whenever someone dies, they eat the body and to stay alive. And so there's this very practical aspect to it. I did let's see, what was this? Oh, this is years ago. Do you remember the famous story about the Uruguayan rugby team that was flying over the Andes?
They made a movie about it. They made a movie about it. As a matter of fact.
It's called Alive. Is the story? It was a huge bestseller. This is like early '70s as a book and then a movie. And the guy who was sort of ended up being that leader of that party, and was the guy who managed to get out with another. He led 2 or 3 guys to get out and bring in help, and to do that, it's such a grisly story that they had to literally, turn their dead companions into jerky, human jerky, and fill their packs to climb over the Andes to get to help. And the guy who was sort of the leader of this whole thing ended up, he was a medical student. He ended up being a doctor. And a few years ago, he wrote a book telling the story from his point of view. And he asked me to give an endorsement, a blurb for his book. So I read this whole book, and I was in touch with him. And, it was just such a revelation of the sheer practicality of it, of that if we're going to stay alive, this is what we have to do. And we're not killing our friends. They're already dead. Some died in the plane crash, and then some died eventually, perished from hunger and whatnot. And they all made a pact that if I die, they're caught in this air, they're stuck in the snow way up in the Andes, and they make a pact that if I die, you should eat my body, and they all agree to that. And so they go about it very practically about how they're going to stay alive up there, and then how they're going to find help. So it seems so shocking to those of us, all of us, who have been not indoctrinated, enculturated with this idea, the notion that it's just absolutely taboo to eat a human body. In those circumstances, it's like the taboos fall away, at least eventually. Maybe not at first, but they do eventually.
Peter, we have to button it here. We're out of time, but I want to just kind of button it here.
Oh, already?
I know. I'm telling you, food is energy. Energy is heat. And people need to remember that. That's the big thing about being in those Arctic, out-of-the-way places. Those last empty places can often find you having to make a decision between violating what you thought your foundational core values were and actually making your way to safety and to continue to live. My brother, I would ask you to keep this conversation going next month, but we always talk about your Thanksgiving feast, and I am not going to put that and mix that in there with this. We love you. We're not going to mix it. I'll give you a call sometime in the next couple of days. Lots to talk about. Peter Stark can be found at peterstarkauthor.com, on Instagram at Peter Stark Adventure Historian, on the Book of Face at Peter W. Stark, and Stark Adventurer on the Twitter that is now known as X. Thank you, Peter. Love you.
Thank you, guys. Love you all.